I want to expound on something that I covered in the hypocrites video. The idea of who are you doing your actions to be seen by? Are you trying to be seen by men, or are you trying to be seen by God? And this seems like a fairly cut and dry situation, that you should always be only acting to be seen by God, and that is true. But are there situations in which you should seek to please men? The inquiry itself might cause you to think, well, yes, there must be situations, otherwise JP wouldn't be bringing it up. And that's right. There are occasions when we should be seeking to please men as well as God. Of course, the obvious one that comes to mind is that we are all ambassadors for Messiah, and that we should seek to represent him in a way that is pleasing to other men. But we'll get into the detail of what I'm talking about as we go along. So the scriptures that I mentioned in the hypocrites video, Matthew 6, 1-2, beware of doing your kind deeds before men in order to be seen by them. Otherwise you have no reward from your Father in the heavens. Thus when you do a kind deed, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do, in the congregation and in the streets, to be praised by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the adulation and praise of men. That's why they're doing their kind deeds. So they've already got their reward. That's what they aim for, and that's what they got. For us, of course, we consider that the reward that we're looking for is from our Father, who sees us conformed to the image of his Son, and rewards us with eternal life. That's ultimately what we are, what we're aiming for. And that's what Yeshua said is missing from the hypocrites, from the actors who are playing a role so that men think, oh, that's really good. And that's the reward that they want and the reward that they get. Now, when we're thinking about who it is that ultimately sees what we're doing, there are going to be many situations in which you acting in a particular way is going to be misunderstood by others. And not that you should be unconcerned with what others think entirely, but if you're acting for the sake of righteousness, for the sake of doing what the word says, it doesn't matter if somebody misunderstands your actions. Ultimately, all things will be brought into the light, and sometimes you doing what is right is going to cause you to be misunderstood by the people who view your actions. Proverbs 26:24-27 says, he who hates pretends with his lips and lays up deceit within him. Though he speaks kindly, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Hatred is covered by deceit, his evil is disclosed in the assembly. Whoever digs a pit falls into it, and whoever rolls a stone, it turns back on him. And we saw in the Torah portion, Joseph, he spoke evilly of his brothers, or as it's put here, he dug a pit And where did he find himself ultimately? He found himself in a pit in a couple of different circumstances. But this is how Yehovah perceives people, particularly how he perceives those who come to him pretending obedience. The actors, the hypocrites, Esau, whatever you want to call them. But this shows us that the way that people act outwardly isn't what's going on the inside, always. Galatians 1 verse 10 says, "For do I now persuade men or Elohim? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still please men, I should not be a servant of Messiah." And that word there, "an," it's in linguistic terms, it's something called a particle, and it's when certain circumstances might come to be dependent upon other things. So in this example here, if Paul was seeking to please men, they're the circumstances upon which not being a servant of Messiah would be dependent. He's basically saying, look, if I am seeking to please men, I'm not a servant of Messiah. Sometimes you'll see this translated as "I would not be." If that was the case, then I would not be a servant of Messiah, but that's what it's getting across. If you're seeking to please men and not Elohim, then you're not being a servant of Messiah. You're not being a servant of God. You're being a servant of those other men, and ultimately you're being a servant of yourself, because you're doing it because you want those men to think well of you. In 1 Thessalonians 2, 5-6, it says, "For we never came with a word of flattery, as you know, nor with a cloak for greed. Elohim is witness." Key thing there. God is witness to this fact. We're not coming with a word of flattery, trying to please men and get them to think well of us. Elohim is witness of these matters, and that's kind of the crux of the whole matter. That what you do ultimately is witnessed by God, and He's the one that ultimately you are seeking to please. If you go into a situation where men would usually be expecting you to be full of flattery, or you have a particular way of being, and you don't act in that way, then that's okay, because God is witness to your true intentions. What are the thoughts and intentions of your heart? That's what's important. Nor were we looking for praise from men. So when they came and they preached the word, they weren't interested in what men might think of them. They weren't coming and saying, "We are the apostles of God who have come to teach you the word of liberty," and all about them. Rather, they were teaching Elohim's word for the salvation of the souls of the people who might receive it. Ezekiel 33, 30-31 says, "As for you, son of man, the children of my people are talking about you beside the walls and in the doors of the houses, and they speak to each other, each saying to his brother, 'Please come and hear what the word is that comes from Yehovah.' And they come to you as people do, and they sit before you as my people. They hear your words, but they do not do them. For with their mouth they show much love. Their hearts pursue greedy gain." So again, hatred is covered by deceit. Actually, what lies in the heart of many people is a hatred for Yehovah, a desire to pretend obedience to him. it's kind of like the idea of, are you coming to church? Like church is some kind of social club, although a lot of these people would probably say, are you coming to the Kehillah? As if that is in some way better, to use the Hebrew name for it. And it's all kind of an act, it's all kind of a garb that these people wear. Nothing wrong with using the word Kehillah. It's just, I'm saying that these sorts of people will use that word as an accoutrement, as something to adorn themselves in. Matthew 23 verse 5 says, they do all their works to be seen by men, and they make their tefillin wide, and they lengthen the zitziot of their garments. So, people who don't wear tzitzit to be seen by Elohim, for Elohim to look upon them as this person is righteous, they do all those things to be seen by men, so that men might think, oh, look at these righteous individuals. And you will see these sorts of people and be able to recognize them. Not that I'm saying that you should judge somebody else. If you see someone with long tzitzit, don't judge them and say, oh, they're just doing it because they're an actor. Leave that sort of judgment to Elohim. But that is the sort of behavior that you see from these people. In 2 Corinthians 5 verse 20, what I was talking about before, therefore we are ambassadors on behalf of Messiah, as though Elohim were pleading through us. It's like we are an organ of Elohim in the world, through which he can seek to reach other people. So maybe people who are going about adorned in such a way are doing so out of a sincere, genuine desire to be a representative of Messiah. You never know what's going on in someone's heart. These things are things that we should be aware of for ourselves. The word is a mirror for us to behold our natural face. It's as a mirror. It's like a mirror for us to behold our natural face, so that we can see how we really are. And we shouldn't pretend, oh, I'm nothing like that. I don't act in that way at all. We're all like that. That's the point of the word. It's something by which men can behold their natural face and say, oh, that's not very good. I don't want to be like that. I want to be like the Messiah. I want to accord myself with what is good. I want to change myself. So all of these things are things that are present in each one of us. Some kind of desire to be recognized by men. But we should put that aside and say, well, my actions now are to be recognized by Elohim, and we change the way that we look at the world and the way that we go about things to be in accordance with it. In 1 Corinthians 10, 29 to 33, it says, now I say conscience, not your own, but that of the other. For why is my freedom judged by another's conscience? And when Paul is saying this, it's like when he says in Romans 9, who says to Elohim, why have you made me like this? He's not agreeing with the thought, why should my freedom be judged by another's conscience? It's very, very much positing that as an attitude that you may well have. People have the attitude of, only God can judge me. My actions, if they're righteous, then they're righteous, and who cares what anyone else thinks? But Paul very much advocates against this. We should seek to accommodate the failures, the flaws, the foibles of men. We should seek to accommodate that, not least because at some point we were just as confused as they are, maybe about other things, but we were just as confused as they are. So our behavior, as much as it is to be seen of God, ultimately should in certain circumstances be tailored to be pleasing to men also, because men misunderstand what we're doing, what we're about, and we certainly don't want them to misunderstand in a way that would defile their conscience. It makes me think of what's going on at this time of year in the world. Christmas, of course. Now, the idea of should you go to a Christmas party? Well, it's a bit of a nuanced idea. Should you go to celebrate Christmas? No. But if you happen to go for some other reason, in pursuit of some other goal, is that in and of itself a bad thing? Well, no, because the idol is nothing to you. Christmas is nothing to you. Elohim is overall. You're not there to celebrate Christmas. However, if somebody saw you at that party, they might not understand where you're coming from. And they might come to all the wrong conclusions that, it's okay to do Christmas, and you might end up defiling someone else's conscience because of your liberty. So we shouldn't have this attitude of, why is my freedom judged by another's conscience? If I partake with thanks, why am I evil spoken of for what I give thanks? Well, if my intention is pure, why would it be that it would be detrimental to do this? That's not the attitude that we should have. We should seek for the others in the situation, not for ourselves. Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the esteem of Elohim. So whatever you're doing, of course, you do all to the esteem of Elohim, but all of your actions should be to that end, whatever you're doing. So let's say you're at a Christmas party. Is that a problem in and of itself? Well, it depends on what's going on in your heart. Are you there as to celebrate Christmas, to go to a party for Christmas? Or maybe you're there because you actually came to help the people who were there with something that they needed help with. You've come to fix something for them or to do good for them in some other way. Then the fact that there's a Christmas party going on and you might sit down and eat some Christmas cake and drink a drink, that's not actually a problem in and of itself, because to you the Christmas party is nothing. It's just something that some people in the world are doing. It's not like it's going to scar your soul or anything like that. It's not going to stand against you as a black mark. If you thought that it was wrong to do it and you did it anyway, then that would stand against you when you're judged by God, because that's the thoughts and intents of your heart, was to do something that you thought was wicked, whether or not it actually was. But the actual party itself has not affected you in any way. It was nothing to you. You just happened to be there. So if you're eating and drinking, do so to esteem Elohim. However, we take account of the consciences of other people as well. We seek to please men in that. If somebody thinks that it's some kind of horrendous thing to do to go to a Christmas party, and they see you doing that, then that might defile their conscience, because they might think, oh, well, I'm just going to do this thing that I think is wicked because this other person was doing so. Cause no stumbling either to the Jews or to the Greeks or to the assembly of Elohim, as I also please all men in all matters, not seeking my own advantage, but that of the many, that they might be saved. So Paul says very clearly there that in that he does seek to please men. Not please men over pleasing Elohim or instead of Elohim, but doing so in recognition that doing that thing pleases God. So it is to please men, but it's also in recognition that it is ultimately pleasing to God. Paul sums up this kind of idea in an earlier verse, verse 24. He says, "Let no one seek his own, but each one that of the other." So in that way we seek to please men. We don't seek for ourselves. We don't say, well, it's okay for me to do this. I have freedom to do this, so I'm just going to do it. Why should my freedom be judged by another's conscience? That's not the attitude that we're to have. Instead, we lay down our own desires in pursuit of service of the good for other people. Matthew 23:25-27 says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are filled with plunder and unrighteousness. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish so that the outside of them becomes clean too. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, actors, because you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly indeed look well, but inside are filled with dead men's bones and all uncleanness." So this is what we are to avoid. We're to avoid just making an outward appearance to other people. All of our actions should come from the inside of the cup having been cleansed. And again, it's good to recognize that all of us need the inside of the cup cleansing. We can recognize that certain behavior is abhorrent, having been trained by the word of Elohim, but let's never get to a place where we pretend that we don't have anything like that inside of us. We clean the inside of the cup, we get ourselves right according to the word, and then the outside will appear beautiful to other people. We shouldn't just seek to get men's praise, for them to think that we're righteous, when actually inside we're harboring all sorts of evil. Matthew 15:7-8 says, "Hypocrites, Isaiah rightly prophesied about you, saying, 'This people draw near to me with their mouth and respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me.'" So think whether this is how you operate. You say the right things because you want the people around you to think that you're in the right place, or whether or not your heart is actually for Elohim. Don't be actors Don't be those that Isaiah or Yeshayahu prophesied about. Matthew 6:1-6 says, "Beware of doing your kind deeds before men in order to be seen by them. Otherwise you have no reward from your Father in heaven. Thus, when you do a kind deed, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do, in the congregations and in the streets to be praised by men. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do a kind deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your kind deed shall be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret shall himself reward you openly." So he uses an extreme example there to drive the point home. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Obviously, you're all one body. That is impossible to some degree, but Yeshua is saying this should be your attitude of mind, that if your right hand is doing something, your left hand doesn't even know about it, because that's how you go into the situation. That's how you approach it. "When you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the congregations and on the corners of the streets to be seen by men. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward." What they were looking for, they've already got it. Now, it's not saying don't pray in the congregation. You always have to pray in private. It's saying don't pray in the congregation to be seen of men. Don't let that be your goal. Don't think up an amazing prayer to say, you think, oh wow, people will really think that was a powerful prayer to say. Yeshua is saying your attitude of mind should be that you're praying to God, so do it in secret. Go into your room and pray to him in secret. Again, not saying never pray in public, but let your prayer be earnest unto the Father and not at all to be seen by other people. But when you pray, go into your room, having shut the door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. If that is your attitude of mind, if that's how you approach these things, that you're praying to him, then you can expect him to respond to you. If you're praying in order to be seen by men, you already have your reward. You've got what you were aiming at. You were never actually praying for the Father to hear you. Maybe you would like the Father to hear you, but that's not the same thing. Yeshua gives us a complete inversion of the idea of doing things to be seen of men and for them to recognize you. He says, "Let your light so shine before men, so that they see your good works and praise your Father who is in the heavens." So rather than doing good works, kind deeds, for men to see you and recognize you, do your good works in order for them to recognize your Father who is in the heavens, or is in heaven. Now, this brings me to something that we have on the website. It says, if you wish to support the way, you can donate here. When we receive donations, we do not seek to learn information about the sender from PayPal. Therefore, we do not retrieve email addresses to send messages of thanks to. This is in order that for any money to have been given in secret, we would therefore like to express our thanks for any money received ahead of time. Basically, we're not going to send messages of thanks for things that are sent, because those things, if sent with the right attitude of mind, have been sent in obedience to what the Father has said to be done in order to be recognized by the Father. Not that we're not thankful, the people send things, just that that's how it should be. It should be done in secret. It should be done because the Father is going to recognize that as a good thing, not because we are going to send out an email saying, oh, thank you for this, that, and the other. Of course, we would thank people if we were aware of it. If someone gave us some money in person, of course, we would say thank you. Of course, we are thankful. But in order to facilitate what the scriptures say, this is our approach to doing that. Paul writes about something very, very similar to that when he writes to the people in Philippi. He says, and you know too, Philippians, that in the beginning of the good news, when I went out from Macedonia, no assembly shared with me concerning giving and receiving, except you only. Because even in Thessalonica, you sent my need once and twice. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that is multiplying to your account. So we have the same attitude. We're not desirous of gifts from people. We are rather desirous that people would send tithes, would send whatever free will offerings to the Father, in order that they are recognized by the Father for what they have done. And that should be the attitude of mind of people giving also, and that's what we're trying to facilitate. Indeed, I have all and more than enough. I have been filled, having received from Epaphroditus what you sent, a sweet-smelling fragrance, an acceptable offer, well-pleasing to Elohim. That's what these things are. They are mincha in the spiritual sense to Yehovah. And my Elohim shall fill your need according to his riches in esteem by Messiah Yeshua. So that is the correct attitude of mind for the one receiving as for the one giving. It should all be in recognition that what is being achieved when somebody gives is that their deeds are going to be recognized before Elohim, and the person who receives, they see what is done. Of course, they're thankful for it, but they give esteem to the Father who is in heaven. Ultimately, that's where all of it comes from. Luke 17:11-18, we see Yeshua model this for us. It says, and it came to be as he went to Jerusalem that he passed through the midst of Shomeron, that's Samaria, and Galilee. And as he was entering into a certain village, he was met by 10 leprous men who stood at a distance. And they lifted up their voices, saying, Yeshua, Master, have compassion on us. And having seen them, he said to them, go show yourselves to the priests. And it came to be that as they were going, they were cleansed. So when it says 10 leprous men, that's kind of the English translation, meaning that they had Sara'at. And the way that they would have to be declared clean is they would have to have that recognized by a priest, that all of the marks of Sara'at had gone from them. So Yeshua just said, go and show yourselves to the priests. Now these were leprous men, or men with Sara'at. So the idea of go and show yourselves to the priests, to one who did not believe, would not make any sense, because they'd just be thinking, well, I'm covered in Sara'at. What's the use in going and showing myself to the priest? But these men, in faith, when Yeshua said, go and show yourselves to the priests, they left and they were healed as they went, because of their belief. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, returned and praising Elohim with a loud voice. And he fell down upon his face at his feet, giving thanks to him. And he was a Shomeronite, or a Samaritan. So he falls down and he's giving thanks to Yeshua, just as men gave thanks to the apostles after being healed by them. But what is the thing that Yeshua recognizes as important here is not that he's giving thanks to him, it's that he is praising Elohim for what has been done. If as servants of God, Charlie and I do something that is good and men thank us for it, then, of course, we're not going to say, oh, you shouldn't thank us, you should be thanking God, because people thank God and they thank us for what we have done also. And that's what Yeshua does here. But he doesn't say, oh, yes, thank me, I will receive thanks for what I've done. He just doesn't address that at all. Yeshua answering said, were there not 10 cleansed, but where are the 9? And is he saying here, where are the other 9? Why have they not come to thank me? No, what he says is, was no one found to return to give praise to Elohim except this foreigner? So he's recognizing in this that the important thing would be that they're coming and praising Elohim. Not that they were coming and giving thanks to him, but that they were giving esteem to Elohim for what had been done. Again, it's changing the focus from, well, I've done a thing, therefore I desire recognition from men because of the thing that I've done. Changing the focus to, well, what does Elohim think? Or was it Elohim ultimately that was behind this? Should I be giving thanks and praise to Elohim? So that's something to think about as you go on. We should all examine ourselves in the light of Scripture, examine all of our actions and examine all of our motives and see, are we doing this for the praise of men or for the esteem of Elohim? I'll see you next week.